I was invited to a Tibetan Lama's talk many years ago. I like listening to him. The scent of incense, the sound of bells, the robes, and his mala all seemed to conjure a deep memory. He didn't have my entire attention until he answered a question from the audience. I don't recall the question, but I recall the answer. Bleeding to death is one of the most conscious and desirable ways to die because you stay present until the very last possible second, and you can experience and see the stages of separation you go through when leaving the physical realm, he said. This captivated me. I knew that was true, but I'd never heard anyone confirm it. My entire body shook with joy. In some ways, it felt validated. After the birth of my second kid, I hemorrhaged and bled to death when I was 25 years old. I underwent what is now known as a near-death experience, or NDE. I had an 18-hour labor, and by the time my son was born, we were both very damaged. I was taken to a ward and left to rest alone. I appreciated the peace and seclusion. I was hoping to catch some shut-eye, but first, I commended my body for enduring the torture at the hands of an inexperienced young doctor. I prayed for my tiny baby, who'd been damaged and traumatized by the journey through my pelvis, and thanked God for safely delivering us both and giving me the fortitude and courage to give birth naturally and without medicines. I felt emboldened. Everything seemed possible. I decided to squirm and find a comfortable sleeping position because I was completely fatigued. As I moved, I realized I was stuck to the sheets with something warm and sticky, and I was too dizzy to get up to see what was wrong. A chilly, electric feel washed over me, and my field of vision was filled with pinpricks of dancing light. After a few moments, a nurse entered and glanced at me. She appeared concerned and went quickly to check my pulse. I watched her raise my arm and grasp my waist, but I didn't feel her contact. "Code blue. This woman has no pulse," she yelled. When I tried to talk, I realized I couldn't make a sound because I couldn't breathe. I panicked, desperately sending the signal to my lungs to breathe, but there was no reaction. My body was closing down, and I was experiencing acute claustrophobia. My senses began to shut down one by one. There was a ruckus in the hall. There was the sound of individuals running, yelling directions, and moving loud machines at high speeds. This makes me nervous. I was exhausted. I didn't want to see or feel what they were planning to do to me. I've had enough of it. This is when I learned that death is an exhalation that cannot be followed by an inhalation. That is straightforward. I don't think I'd ever fully appreciated my breath before, but in that instant, I realized its genuine worth. All that stands between you and death is your breath. A completely inhaled breath is the Holy Spirit in action, and when you breathe consciously, you are in a state of grace. I was embarrassed by how much I'd taken my life-giving breath for granted. I erupted out of the summit of my skull in what felt like seconds. Popped is a suitable term, because there was an internally audible pop as I exited my body through the soft place or fontanelle in infants' skulls. The panic was gone almost instantaneously, and I was floating around the hospital room ceiling, staring down on a body I recognized as mine. I had no feelings for the body, only curiosity. I appeared smaller and different than I had envisioned. Years later, I learned that we never see ourselves as others perceive us. We only see our reflection in mirrors or photos. I was a sculpture teacher at the time, and I was creating a death mask as part of an artwork. As I removed the mask from the mold, I saw my face from my deathbed, not the one I see every day in the mirror. It was a light bulb moment. As nurses and physicians rushed into the room, I felt I didn't want to be there any longer, so I exited the building and flew into the night sky. I felt liberated and unburdened, and I was pulled to the stars. I realized I could simply float over the treetops and return home to see my family, but the night sky's call was louder. I desired to fly into space and be free. I became aware that I was moving at the speed of thinking. All I had to do was think upward, and I'd be on my way till I changed my mind or altered it. That was incredible. However, it took some getting used to. My old belief system severely constrained me, I felt. I recognized that my thoughts were quickly forming my reality, so I needed to be precise. I turned around and saw Earth. She was like a gem poised in space, very lovely. I enjoyed Earth. In fact, I loved it more than my own body. I was heartbroken to be leaving her, and I finally knew what it meant when people said, "The Earth is our mother." She's a living being. I'd been too preoccupied with myself to notice. Then, while I pondered what to do in this new scenario, I began to see my life flash before my eyes, like a holographic film. That is, I watched it in 3 dimensions, using all of my senses. I was a witness to my own life, an objective witness. I say objective because I felt everyone's emotions and observed everyone's point of view, not just my own selfish one. When I was approximately 2 years old, I shoved my neighbor off my swing, sending him home crying, and I felt fine because it was my swing. And another, a young man in college rapidly fell in love with me because he sensed I was the one for him. His passion and intensity terrified me, so I fled without explanation. I could feel his anguish. I'd shattered his heart. Another motive emerged during my life evaluation. I lied to myself about saving the other person by not stating the truth when I was clear about how I felt, or I avoided confrontation by appearing to be confused. I was showed how harmful this was. It's like throwing a stone into the midst of a still pond. The waves continue till they reach the coast, then bounce and go again, acting and interacting. The repercussions are felt in ways that we cannot even fathom. I was perplexed when it was over. Wait a minute, I replied to myself. I didn't see any of my positive deeds. Not one time I offered or got love. The love you give and the love you get are yours for all eternity. You only answer for your incompletions, all the things not uttered or done, a voice said to me. What I had seen made sense. I saw all of my shortcomings. Why hadn't anyone informed me? I could have handled things differently. I also saw that I was being shown all of the paths I'd not pursued in life. There were numerous paths accessible, seemingly effortless virtual superhighways, straight and well lit with no speed limit, similar to the Autobahn in Germany. There were also twisting wooded routes with rest spots, similar to the inviting roads across the countryside. Mysterious and dark, alluring since I couldn't predict where the path would lead or what adventures lay ahead. We frequently pick this convoluted path since it's the model that our families have set for us. We don't believe we deserve the clear, easy way because it may be boring and monotonous, or it may be too visible, or it may not be hard or daring enough. We're also concerned that if we pursue the direct routes, we will arrive to God too quickly and our lives would be cut short. Which, I should add, demonstrate how little we trust God. This is one way to keep suffering going. Then I was shown instances in my life where angels directly assisted me. They came in a variety of disguises, and I was shocked at my lack of acknowledgement and thankfulness, as well as how cherished and protected I'd been in my relatively brief existence. I was 15 when I was admitted to the hospital to have a grapefruit-sized cyst removed from an ovary. This operation had gone badly, and as I went to the bathroom, my incision opened, revealing my intestines to my dismay. Although I was reclaimed, an infection set in. I wanted to die while I laid in bed. My existence seemed nothing but misery. In the dark, a presence appeared by the side of my bed and remained vigilant. This entity said, "Have heart. The best is yet to come," as the sun rose in the morning and the rays shone in on my face. Then he vanished. I began to feel better. In another case, I was out of state for homecoming weekend during college and had to return to my dorm before curfew. My attempts to return had been a comedy of errors. I had misplaced my ticket, the plane was late, and so on. I had a 103-degree fever due to strep throat and had no money. I discovered I needed $19 and change to get a bus back to college when I arrived at Port Authority in New York City. Then a man strolled out of the crowd, handed me a $20 cash and said, "Get back safely." I was sick and desperate. He was gone before I could say anything. He was a guardian angel. Others were revealed to me, and these were just a few examples of many. It took some time for me to process everything that was being shown to me. I felt like I was being shattered. I found myself approaching what appeared to be a tunnel once more. This time, at the speed of thought, I approached the ribbed opening, naturally inquisitive but apprehensive. The tunnel was tall enough to walk through, but it became increasingly tight as it progressed. It had a dark brownish, gray, pinkish tint that felt silky, like velvet. I was drawn to the far end of the room, to the brightest light I'd ever seen. The light sprang to life. Consider powder snow balling from an evergreen tree into the wild and being caught by the sun. Each flake is a shimmering rainbow in the wind. That's exactly how it felt, except more wonderful because it was living. I made the decision to go, regardless of the cost. I spotted golden egg-like formations of light moving as I approached the end of the tunnel and walked into the light. I'm not sure how I discovered it, but each golden shape contained a familiar person. My father was standing to my left. I was happy to see him because he died when I was only 20 years old, and I had missed him much. "Daddy," I reasoned. Every idea was telepathic. When my father was living, that was a natural method of communicating between us. My father was quadriplegic his entire life due to severe multiple sclerosis. When something is physically lost, something else is gained, as it is with many people. He had a wonderful mind, and I spent my childhood chatting to him without saying anything. I had no idea how odd our way of communication was until he was gone, and regrettably, it became a skill I had to suppress. I discovered that people dislike having their minds read. All humans, it is believed, have the ability to converse telepathically, and I believe they do. Secrets, falsehoods, and withholdings are the only things that prevent telepathy. These things rendered us inoperable. My father was also present. I'd never seen him stand or walk before. I was overjoyed because he appeared to be in his prime. We exchanged a flood of love from heart to heart when he was restored. I spotted a trail of lights curving out behind him into the distance and asked my father, "Who are they?" "These are your ancestors," he murmured gently to me. "They've arrived to greet you. Didn't you realize you were your forefathers' last hope? What they couldn't accomplish in their life, they expected you to do. You made it this far because you were able to stand on their bones." I was awed and honored to see my lineage sprawled out in front of me. I'd never be alone again. Then I focused on a light straight in front of me. I realized it was Jesus right away. I reached forward with my hands, sensing a membrane or some barrier I needed to cross in order to enter his presence, and encountered a welcoming force field. My hands began to convert into golden light as I touched it, and it proceeded up my arms, my heart gushing love to Christ while also receiving it. It was moving. I was ecstatically dissolving into golden light and all-knowingness, a bliss that exceeded all comprehension. This golden light must have triggered my hands, for I later discovered I couldn't see with my hands. When I practice hands-on healing, it's as if my hands can detect any disturbances or anomalies, physical or otherwise, inside the confines of a session. This is one of the things I brought back with me and now employ when asked to relieve pain or restore well-being. A voice asked, "What about your children?" as the light reached my shoulders and was about to arc across my chest. I was lost and irritated. What? Then I realized I had a young daughter and a newborn boy. Who could look after them? I thought of my then husband, and I saw my children's lives, the lives they would have if I left them to be raised by him, and that wasn't acceptable. I tried desperately to think of someone else who could care for my children. What about my mom, my mother-in-law, my closest companion? Again, none of these potential lives were appealing to me. My children deserved better, and they needed me. I looked at Christ and understood that no matter how terrible it was to leave the light, my responsibility was to my children. I realized I needed to return. I was back in my body at the hospital at that moment, cold, in excruciating agony, and very depressed. The physicians and nurses were administering a blood transfusion to me. I have a rare blood type, and all they had was frozen blood that hadn't been appropriately warmed. My body was freezing, and it seemed like a swarm of bees was stinging me. After the blood flowed through my heart, the opposite half of my body became warmer. This is the ability of free will. It is a privilege to have free will. We make decisions, and that has enormous power. In the face of this reality, how can we play the victim? It was still too terrible for me to be aware, so I left my body and found myself in what appeared to be a spherical, domed marble room surrounded by arches and filled with heavy mist or fog. I was levitated into the center of the room, where 24 teachers sat in a circle around me. They were robed and appeared to be wearing hoods. Some were bearded, and as a group, they radiated cosmic wisdom. What in the name of God was I doing in this group? They told me stuff to make me feel better and to instruct me. I eagerly absorbed their teachings as if they were water for my thirsty soul. They eventually asked if I had any questions, and I was free to ask as many as I wanted until there were none left. I was enveloped in a glorious silence and felt complete. I remembered the teachings for about 3 days after I regained consciousness. Then life seemed to take over, and the lessons faded into the background. I know they're still a part of me, and every now and then I come across a truth that reminds me, sure, I know it to be true. Throughout the day, I was unconscious. Finally, there was a wise, elderly nurse who brought my baby into my room and let him cry by my side. It was as if his cry traveled through time and space, finding me and calling me back. I heard his cry and fought to return to my body, to clutch him to my breast, and I truly felt my spirit drop into my body with a thud. This incident changed my life. It steered my life towards service and recovery, gave me the feeling that we are all the living hope of our forefathers. It provided me a first-hand experience of eternal life and demonstrated to me that I'm here by choice to fulfill my soul's purpose, that I am an individual and unique fragment of the God force, and that I will never be seen in this form again in all the universes. As a result, I'm quite valuable. It makes no difference what I do. All that is required of me is to be the love that I, and only I, bear on this earth at this time when it's sorely needed. I also learned that death can be the ultimate healing. Fear of dying can swallow a life since it prevents many individuals from genuinely living. Furthermore, I discovered that being in spirit form, in my light body, infinite, all-knowing, and unbound, is simply beautiful. But only in our human bodies can we breastfeed a newborn, walk on a beach at daybreak, make love, smell a rose, or taste a strawberry. The lessons of love are made present here in our bodies. When we choose love, knowing full well that we have free choice, heaven rejoices. I remember and renew my spirit, my connection to spirit, and the privilege of being alive every time I take a deep breath with awareness.